I can't tell you just how pathetic and absolutely puny some of these politicians fighting against Trump look right now. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Happy Monday. Good to be here. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. You can reach me there. And also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. So 10 a.m. this morning, Trump had a press conference announcing he would seize control over the Washington, D.C. Police Department. And this is the first step of Trump's plan to federalize control over the District of Columbia. I mentioned last week that this would happen. I told you this was in the cards. By the way, Trump has flirted with this before. It all came out in January 6th testimony on the Hill, the House Unselect Committee, soliciting a firsthand account from Mayor Muriel Bowser, who spoke to the committee about the summer of George back in June. June of 2020, all the conflagration going on, BLM, etc., unrest in the city of Washington, D.C., and Trump, through Mark Meadows, had reached out to the city back then, had flirted with the idea. At any rate, didn't come to pass. So Trump has known that this is a power he possesses and has clearly decided now to do it, invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia's Home Rule Act. Now, Washington, D.C., and you know this, it's not a state. It's a special district. It's created in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution. And as a unique status district, it falls fully under the control of Congress. And to the extent that the president has authority ceded to him by Congress, the president has absolute authority to do certain things, such as this. Now, the way I read the code is that this gives Trump only temporary power. There's some dispute about whether it's 48 hours or 30 days. But with congressional approval, he can continue on with this. Now, I've been thinking about this. Should it get there? Should Trump get to a place where he requires Congress to give him a 2 thumbs up? I could see a lot of Republicans strongly supporting this because, well, for one, every person in Congress lives in the District of Columbia, or at least lives near it, or has staff that live in the city. It goes without saying, they work in the city, right? The Capitol is in the city. The Capitol itself is protected by the Capitol Police. The Capitol Police keep things nice and tidy on federal property, in and around the Capitol, the office buildings, etc. But it gets dicey for staff members who have to leave the confines, the safety of the Capitol, and travel at night, wee hours of the morning, to and from work. Gosh forbid they want to go out and actually enjoy themselves on a Friday night, let's say. Now, the entire story in D.C. is a summation of what is fundamentally wrong with the left, what they have done to this country, and how to fix it. Law and order has to come back. And when you listen to Trump and Jeanine Pirro and Kash Patel, you understand from this situation that even if you wanted to simply get in and police more, you're not going to get the job done because the laws are designed to let criminals free. And this is what we have spoken about extensively on this program. Friends, you and I have talked over and over again about the importance of ridding ourselves of this social justice, restorative justice crap. The left has somehow convinced whole swaths of America that the way that you rehabilitate criminals is by going easy on them. Let's talk about the youths, because that's a huge problem in DC. And I know this. The biggest lie being told right now, incidentally, is that crime went down last year. That is complete and utter hocus pocus. They even arrested a captain in the DC Metro Police Department because they found out that he was deliberately underreporting felonies. He was downgrading felonies in his reporting to misdemeanors in order to cook the books. All of it is a fraud. But I digress. Story after story after story. And these are the only the stuff that's getting into the news. You know, I live here in Las Vegas, and many of you live here somewhere near me. Many of you listen around the country, and in fact, around the world. Very few of you, I'm just judging by the downloads, are in the District of Columbia. But if you do live in the District of Columbia, you're aware of even more criminality than we are. But the stories that have been coming out, there's young criminals running amok in the city, and they're doing it because they know there are no consequences to their bad behavior. This is exactly the problem that we're facing, and we're facing even more significantly before the state legislature here in Nevada made some tweaks in our classrooms. If you are an educator, you teach in a school, in a high school, in Las Vegas, Nevada, Clark County Unified School District, and you have one or two, you're probably laughing because it's more than that, one or two miscreants, okay? Kids in the back of the room making noises, being disrespectful, cursing at you. What can you do about having that young menace removed from the classroom so the rest of the kids can learn? The answer is not a whole lot, because our legislature, dominated by the Democrats, came in their infinite wisdom up with this tremendous idea, wrapped it up in jargon that sounds great: restorative justice. We're going to work with these youths to better understand them. Because you see, Sam, these young people, this school shouldn't be a pipeline to prison, so we're going to be more patient with them. And guess what happened? It's really quite easy. It was quite foreseeable for anybody who's ever raised a kid. Fewer consequences resulted in more bad behavior. And the very purpose behind the reforms, behind the big-hearted ideology that the left purports to espouse, resulted actually in quite the opposite result than its stated intent. More kids now than ever have no chance of succeeding in the world wherever restorative justice was tried. And in DC, and you heard it, and I'll play it here after the break, Jeanine Pirro saying, my hands are tied. I can arrest these thugs, and they're 14, 15, 16, 17. I can't touch them. And if you can't touch them, if that really is the state of law enforcement, I can tell you two things right now. Number one, crime will spiral out of control. If you give a child a free pass to be an adult criminal, that child will become an adult criminal. Make no mistake about it. And number two, what you saw today, is just the beginning. Trump is using this case study, if you will, the situation in DC, as an example of what the right believes, what MAGA believes, what America First believes, what Trump believes to be the solution for out-of-control crime everywhere in the country. He is using this as a demonstration of his core beliefs. And just like Milei cleaned up Argentina economically, just as Bukele down in El Salvador took one of the most dangerous places on the planet and made it safe, Trump is doing that here. And one of the added benefits is the screaming that you're hearing from the left, from the Democrats, further isolates the Democratic Party and puts them deeper and deeper into that 20% camp. We keep hearing about 80-20 issues. Well, keeping the streets safe and your kids safe and taking ghost guns off the street and violent criminals off the street is really more of a 90-10 issue. And Trump is forcing, by virtue of his strong action and the antipathies that the left have for him via Trump derangement syndrome is forcing the left to be the 10%. It's further political isolation, absolute brilliant move on Trump's, and the left just cannot not take the bait. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Well, personal safety is just one of those core essential things you can't live without. That's what makes it a 90-10 issue. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. If you analyze the situation going on in D.C., where crime is rampant, okay, what Trump is doing is not occurring in some sort of vacuum bubble. It's not a political stunt. It is a pushback against radical Democrat policies that have eroded public safety. And my opinion on this, incidentally, is that this erosion is done on purpose. How many times do I say here on this program that the stated purpose of what a Democratic policy is supposed to achieve, the stated purpose is never the real purpose? Speaking of restorative justice, which is the driving ideology behind some of these statutes in the District of Columbia related to young offenders, mean 17-year-olds that shoot people with guns, for example, is on the paper, on the premise of it, designed to help young people, not end up in prison for the rest of their lives. But the reality, the real effect of it is that you have gangs of youths running around the city creating enormous havoc. I don't know if you remember this on Friday, I believe it was, end of last week, after the staffer from Doge, Big Balls, was violently assaulted. There was a street takeover of hundreds of Washington, D.C. youths who did untold damage. Violence was spiraling. And again, the policies there are supposed to help these young people stay out of trouble and find their way in life. But this as a parent, right? I mean, I have 3 kids. Even if you don't have kids, let's say you are childless. Let's say you are, maybe you're smart. Maybe you probably have more hair and fewer wrinkles than I do. But you go out, right? You go out to eat. You sit at a restaurant, and there's 2 tables, each with small kids, okay? Table number 1 is me. And my kids do anything wrong in a restaurant, and all hell breaks loose. Sit down, do what be polite, say your pleases, say your thank yous, be respectful to the waiter or waitress. That's me and my wife. The other table, kids are crawling all over, and we've got soft parenting. Okay, Johnny, you need to listen. I'm going to count to 3. Which table do you want to sit next to at a restaurant? Now amplify this by thousands of young people who are being denied corrective measures by Democrats who simply believe or I think they want us to believe, that they're doing right by these kids and giving them a second chance in life. It's quite the opposite result. The opposite result is these kids are going to further spiral into doom and despair and bad actions and felonies, etc. Listen to Jeanine Pirro talk about her frustration. She's, of course, the top cop U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. This is at the press conference this morning after Trump federalized the Washington, D.C. police force.
They know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him? Probation. Says you should go to college. We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept of, no cash bail. We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens. And it starts today. But it's not going to end today, because the president is going to do everything we need to do to make sure that these emboldened criminals understand we see you, we're watching you, and we're going to change the law to catch you. And my final note is this. These kids understand that the jurisdiction is through the State Attorney General, Brian Schwab. I did a poster of the young man from Doge who was beaten bloody with a severe concussion, a broken nose. And then I did a poster of what happens to those kids, because I can't arrest them, I can't prosecute them. They go to family court, and they get to do yoga and arts and crafts. Enough. It changes today.
These youthful offenders, by the way, the soft on crime approach when it comes to the Democratic Party is for all offenders, all right? But in particular, the soft touch with young criminals is the greatest bit of crazy buffoonery I've ever seen from the Democratic Party my entire life. Democrats somehow have decided to upend and reverse a millennia of societal evolution. You go to the zoo, you see a lion with a cub. The cub gets out of line. The lion smacks the cub or bites him a little bit, whatever. Corrective action. You go to the monkey exhibit. What do you see there? I mean, there's an entire genre of funny YouTube, Instagram, TikTok videos of exactly this. Literally, some gorilla somewhere with the little gorilla baby coming up and, doing something annoying, and the giant silverback goes, smacks the little baby gorilla. And we all look at that video like, haha, that's cute. But what you're seeing there is the natural order of things. You're seeing, young people testing the limits of what they can do. And it is on us, the adults in the room, to provide corrective, constructive, fixes to that behavior. And if you don't correct, if you don't admonish, if you don't punish, these kids are spoiled forever. Again, back to you teachers. What teachers do in America, particularly today, I have an enormous amount of respect for. And I sit here a lot and I rail against the teachers union, and I do not like Randy Weingarten. I admit to this. But even if you're a loony left-wing teacher, I feel bad for you, because the classroom it's a tough place to be. And it is made tougher. Why? Because parents don't parent anymore. Parents don't want to be disciplinarians. They want to be the child's friends. And then these already somewhat damaged kids get put into the system, into school, and they're the teachers' hands are tied through, various laws and administrative rules. So this is what Jeanine Pirro is saying here is absolutely 100% correct. Now, the Democrat reactions, this is where they're putting themselves once again on the wrong side of 80, 20, 90, 10 issues. And just wait till you see some of these reactions. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. As Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, no one knows the left like I do, friends. Make no mistake about it. Sam Mirejovsky here, behind the What's Right microphone. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is where you can reach me. I do check my email here once in a while during the program, and so if you've got something current you want me to address, have a question for me, I will address it there. Now, the Spectator World had a great piece here today after Trump's announcement that he would federalize the D.C. police force, the Metropolitan Police Department. And they called it a shrewd move. Okay, this is Charles Lipson writing for The Spectator. I like this line. First, it talks about, of course, how restoring order is important, particularly in America's capital, blah, 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 right? We get that. But there's this second line here that caught my eye. Trump and his party will reap a second major benefit as well. If he can lessen the muggings, carjackings, and armed robberies, if he can move the homeless off the downtown streets, he will highlight the difference between his approach and the painful failures in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and other major cities. Wait for it. All of them governed by Democrats. Lipson goes on to write that that's a huge political benefit if he can secure it. Let me add something to Mr. Lipson's musings here. And as an added benefit, a third tertiary benefit, if you will, Trump also gets to rile up, because of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, activate in all of the Democrats their instant, insatiable, unstoppable urge to protest against whatever Trump is doing. Trump would get up there and says, I'm going to cure cancer. Suddenly the Democratic Party would instantly go up there and become pro-cancer. It's just how it is. So what do we have here? All of a sudden, everybody is getting up there, foaming at the mouth, losing their minds. I mean, CNN, veins were bulging. The necks of the anchors and various news contributors at the Communist News Network. So here, here's, okay, a taste. Okay, I'll give you a taste. This is Pamela Brown, Brian Todd, talking about, and really immediately going to the council members, the DC council members. Mind you, these are the people who got the city into a bad place to begin with, but they're CNN running straight to these people and amplifying their so-called concerns.
Getting reaction from DC council members.
We are, Pamela and Wolf. This coming into CNN from Council Member Charles Allen of the 6th Ward in D.C. His post is, quote, the president taking over local control of MPD and putting the U.S. military onto the streets of D.C. under the guise of public safety is wrong. It's an extreme, outrageous, and dangerous move for our city and the safety of all of our residents. He's the first city council member to react to this whole thing. None of them had reacted really last week to this in any real measure. This is the first time a city council member has reacted and come out strongly on this. We're also reaching out to Mayor Muriel Bowser's office and the office of the Metropolitan Washington Police Department for their response. We started to reach out to them while this news conference was going on. No word back from them yet. The mayor has been fairly muted in her comments on this. She did speak out yesterday in an interview, but did not openly criticize the president for this. It's an extraordinary move. We have to point out, never before in American history has a U.S. president taken over control of the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. Police Department.
Never before has a president done anything like this. Ah. I mean, they all are getting the vapors over this. You know, this Axios D.C. area Dems rage as Trump takes control of city's policing. Andrew Solander writing this piece. He cites Glenn Ivey, Democrat, Maryland. Shocking stuff even for Trump. Suspicious minds might wonder if this is just kind of a first step towards a move on other parts of the government in District of Columbia. This is great. Eleanor Holmes Norton. Do you know who she is? Good. Most people don't. She has been in office for a bazillion years. She was in Congress, well, going back to the Triassic era, at least. Ms. Norton is a Democrat, member of Congress from the District of Columbia. Guess how many votes she didn't vote on last year? A lot. She didn't vote for a single thing last year or the year before or the year before that because guess what? They don't have a vote in Congress, which really I always wondered about this, Robbie. Why have the person? You're paying her and a staff to not vote. But anyway, she chimed in on this. She is not happy either, called it a historic assault on D.C. home rule, counterproductive escalatory seizure of D.C.'s resources to use for purposes not supported by D.C. residents. One of the longest serving representatives of the citizens of D.C. says, here's where I'm going with this, that public safety is not a key concern of the citizens of the city. If you really think about it, the gall of these people, right? The gall. I mean, if you're a member of Congress, again, you got Capitol Hill Police, you live in a nice house, you've got money, maybe a high-rise condo somewhere near the Capitol, you have a doorman, you have security, you get a car drive you to the Capitol, you get levels of security that we, the people, do not. And the people in your district, some of whom quite poor, and the ones that are not radical criminals, the ones that just want to go to work or cross the street, go to church, whatever it is, without getting shot, what are they supposed to do? And their representatives saying, peasants, you know what's good for you. You don't need more police. You need more social justice. It's absurd. All of it. Laughable. But Trump is provoking this reaction in them. They are making clowns of themselves. What is that term? I love this term. It isn't used enough. Beclowning. This is like when somebody makes a fool of themselves, makes a clown. You can say, so-and-so is beclowning himself. So, or best is if you like point to somebody and say, don't beclown yourself. Then they spend the rest of the time wondering what the hell you just said. And you can walk away laughing. So that's what's going on here. These people are beclowning themselves. Robbie is laughing. He loves this. He's probably used this on somebody recently, knowing Robbie and his vast vocabulary. Now, here is just one of these profit agitators. Remember all of these little groups that used to get a ton of money from USAID, and Biden was basically emptying the coffers at every government agency into all of these Democratic NGOs. This one is called, the Free DC Project. So these are people who have been advocating for DC statehood, and it's just an on and on thing. It's in the Constitution. It's not going to happen, but okay. Basically, a money grab by these folks. So the director of the program, her name is Nee Taylor. That's, I have two knees. Yeah, but this is without the K's. This is just Nee. Neenee. Okay, Nee Taylor, not thrilled about Trump federalizing the police force. Wow. Well, this is here for your listening pleasure.
We believe there is a better way to protect us all. One that respects rights to build trust and keep our communities truly safe, and that is fascism-free. Fear is not a roadmap to safety. It is a burial. It fails hardest on the black communities that already bear a disproportionate share of surveillance, stops, and forces. I want to be clear. We've been here before. This is a long history. Well before today, the black communities bearing the brunt of aggressive policing. Data and reports from many credible organizations show patterns. Black people are more likely to be stopped, searched, questioned, arrested, and harmed in encounters with the law. When we add the presence of federal agents or the National Guard to daily life in these neighborhoods, the burden can multiply. Not by making harm more rare, but making it more visible and more likely to escalate.
This person, whoever the hell she is holding a massive rally. I mean, and by the way, the crowd, one thing you can't see, everybody in the crowd is wearing matching t-shirts. So this is not a spontaneous thing, right? This is not the people of DC coming out and down with Trump. The people of DC, if you'll notice, Muriel Bowser, the mayor, is being relatively circumspect in her any kind of criticism of Trump. In fact, there was an interview, I think this was about a week ago when this was all starting to heat up. We began talking about it. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC, was asked somewhere on MSNBC or CNN that basically asked, is Trump being racist? And she completely wouldn't go there. She's being pretty circumspect. I think it's because a shrewd politician recognizes that the people making the noise are the people that are getting funded. The people that are getting funded aren't representative of the entire district, of the political populace, the voting public. Now, what I mean is, again, Democrats, this is why it's so stupid. Democrats have got to be alienating their own people. Imagine for a minute, you are sitting there at home in your house apartment in Washington, D.C., and you've had a family member in the last year shot. The chances of that are quite high. And you're sitting there and you see the agitators and your Congress representative and a bunch of people on city council all going, oh, stop this, bad Trump, bad Trump. And you're watching this going, we could use more police on the street. We don't have enough cops. What are they talking about? Who are these people? Why do they look so nice? Why are they wearing designer handbags? We don't even have that. Who are they? And that is, I'm again, the Democratic Party in direct opposition to its own interests is once again jumping on Trump, criticizing Trump, fighting Trump, down with Trump. Whatever Orange Man did that morning is bad. Not because they've analyzed it, not because they've thought about it, not because they've examine the repercussions politically beyond the moment, but because that's the necessary reaction. You have to fight. Now, Nancy Pelosi stepped into the fray with a tweet. When I come back, I'll tell you what that is and how she immediately got a rebuke that everybody will be talking about tonight. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, The What's Right Show, again brought to you by the only personal injury law firm to trust for your injury case. Sam & Ash, Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Yes. Welcome back. The What's Right Show is on. Listener Susan just emailed me. See, folks, you can email me and I'll read it on air. Sam@what'srightshow.com sent me a little thing here about the secret Republican plot to make liberals look like idiots. Have you heard of this? That's right. There is a secret plot afoot to make liberals look dumb. Republicans have been working on this for years. It's known as Operation Just Let Them Speak. And yes, Susan, I agree. It's working. Welcome back to the What's Right Show, powered by Sam & Ash Injury Law. So, speaking of, Nancy Pelosi entered the fray now about 3 hours ago, firing off a tweet, a little post on X, innocent little post. It's so predictable, but wait for it. It gets good. Okay, so here's her post. It's short. I'll read it to you. Donald Trump delayed deploying the National Guard on January 6th when our capital was under violent attack and lives were at stake. This is also predictable. Okay, and she continues, Nancy Pelosi. Now he's activating the D.C. Guard to distract from his incompetent mishandling of tariffs, healthcare, education, immigration, blah, 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 just to name a few blunders. Now, Robbie, this also was predictable. Remember, Trump got somewhere in his frame of references the enormous fraud that was perpetrated on him and on the American people surrounding the events of January 6th and the leading up to the day, the handling of that day and the aftermath. Many, many more or less innocent Americans guilty of basically misdemeanors that should have received fines and an hours-long arrest ended up with their lives destroyed. They ended up in solitary confinement. They ended up with years-long prison sentences, a situation that was not rectified until Trump came into office and began signing pardons. So pardon me if I get a little bit passionate about this. So Nancy Pelosi decides to invoke January 6th, and almost perfectly on cue, a guy named Stephen Sund responds. Sund is a law enforcement veteran and the former chief of police of the U.S. Capitol. When? During January 6th. Now, you want to hear his response. He responds to Nancy Pelosi, telling you, this tonight, you don't even need to watch Fox or any. They're going to talk about this for hours. Here's his post. Ma'am, he's responding to Nancy Pelosi, it's long past time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, do some basic math. January 6th, 3 days before January 6th, I requested National Guard assistance, but your Sergeant at Arms denied it. Under federal law, 2 U.S.C. 1970, I was prohibited from calling them in without specific approval. That same day, Carol Corbin at the Pentagon offered National Guard support, but I was forced to decline because I lacked the legal authority. On January 6th, while the Capitol was under attack, and despite my repeated calls, your Sergeant at Arms again denied my urgent requests for 70 agonizing minutes, quote unquote, running it up the chain for your approval. When I needed assistance, it was denied. When it suited you, you ordered fencing topped with concertina wire, that's the barbed wire with really sharp barbed wire, and surrounded the Capitol with thousands of armed National Guard troops. This is what finally, this is the new era that we are in now. People are speaking openly. We knew this was the case from the beginning. This was never a focus of the House Unselect Committee on January 6th, right? They went through, hours and hours and hours of boring testimony just to figure out that Trump was the culprit and Trump was trying to take over the government and everything, okay? The whole thing was a hoax. Well, you say, why was it a hoax? Well, very basically. And, Scott Adams gets into this a lot where he says, ask a person who was there at the Capitol. Were they there to overthrow the government? No one was there to overthrow. Oh, really? A bunch of Republicans storming the Capitol to overthrow the government and not one of them had a gun? What kind of sus Republicans are these? I mean, let me tell you, if they'd called me to testify at the House Unselect Committee, I'd been like, bro, the Republicans I know, if they were going to show up to storm the Capitol and save us from, let's say, a Chinese takeover of the government, whatever, a really true insurrection against the government, woo, there'd been some firepower in that bunch. Anyway, it's just one of the examples of how this whole thing is nutty. And then also they thought that they were there protesting an election that they honestly believed was stolen. So now Nancy Pelosi has waded into this. Now Nancy Pelosi has tied in January 6th, which is this is a huge thing in Trump's, mental frame. And now Trump is also going to use this fixing of DC crime to demonstrate how you can very quickly seize control and protect the Capitol when you have approval from the, from Congress, you don't have Nancy Pelosi there fighting you on it. It's really going to be a beautiful thing to behold. Now, the next step of the beauty here is happening with, I think, a bit of walls closing in on the Democrats. It's not just the gerrymandering, it's also the criminal investigations that are cropping up, new ones every day. I'll tell you which ones to keep your eyes on and why this matters. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Making radio great again. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the program, folks. That's right. Remember when all we heard on the media 24/7, 365 days, all of it was the walls are closing in on Donald Trump. The walls are closing in. There were so many moving walls, it was hard to keep track of them. Well, this was when, right at the beginning of the term, right, Mueller investigation kicked off. Every little whisper was going to be Trump's immediate demise. And what have we found out in the last few months? Well, dispositively, it's clear that it was all nonsense. This case, or these cases against Trump, the effort to dispose of Trump politically and, frankly, to eliminate him as a free citizen of the United States, failed spectacularly because there was no there. Here's a little, Robbie, I'm glad you pulled this out. This is a little taste, if you will, a little amuse-bouche of what it was like if you were watching television somewhere during Trump's first term, perhaps a little bit after, then, of course, going into the Jack Smith era. All of the reports were constantly talking about the walls closing in. It's all we heard.
The walls feel like they are closing in.
Feels the walls closing in.
I think this is a guy who feels like the walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in on him?
Because the walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in on the...
Now the walls appear to be closing in.
Really kind of the walls closing in on him.
The walls are closing in because the walls are indeed closing in.
I think at this point the walls are spinning.
The legal walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in.
I think the walls are finally closing in.
The walls.
The walls.
The walls.
The walls.
The walls.
And the walls.
The walls.
The walls are closing in.
Closing in.
Closing in on.
Closing in.
The walls
are closing in.
He's not looking forward to any of it.
Okay.
He's horrified.
Okay.
He's
the
just talking big.
By the way, Menendez was one of these people, right?
As has been
He's
said
in
before.
prison now. Hardy har har. I mean, walls closed in on at least somebody in that picture, but in that clip. But a number of the people speaking here are folks who now themselves find themselves under a bit of scrutiny, legal scrutiny. Brennan, Schiff, Letitia James, etc. Now, you will not go on MSNBC Today or CNN or even really Fox News and hear about the walls closing in on these Democrats, because they're not, if anything is being said right now, it's caution. The president should be cautious. The president should be careful. Trump should, the decorum. And this doesn't set the right precedent. Because, of course, after being lectured, all of us, forget how Trump feels. He's got to feel terrible. But you know how I feel? I am sick and tired of, for the past 9 years, being lectured by a bunch of frauds about how no one's above the law. No one's above the law, Sam. You can't say that. It doesn't matter if he's president. Nobody's above the law. And now that all of a sudden we find out that Adam Schiff has lied on his mortgage. All of a sudden we find out that Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, who made it her life's mission, she ran on a platform of getting the orange Hitler. She was going to throw Trump into jail. What did we find out? We found out that she too fudged a mortgage little thing or two, signed under penalty of perjury, federal law violation, state law violation, bank fraud, mortgage fraud, you name it. A whole host of problemos. So, I don't know. I just read New York Post writing a piece that they basically have Schiff and James dead to rights on these violations. Now, it may seem like a trivial thing to you, and I know it's not as sexy as talking about a president who attempted an insurrection, who sent his unarmed supporters, a bunch of grandmothers and realtors and school teachers and PTA presidents to the Capitol with flags to take over the government. I go, that's a sexier story. I get it. But to me, speaking as an attorney, and yes, I do practice law when I'm not on the air. To me, having somebody say something in a document under penalty of perjury when getting a bank loan, which means, of course, there's a whole host of additional, there's a whole host of scrutiny on that, legal scrutiny, because it's generally assumed that when you're making representations to the bank, it's in the public interest that you be truthful, because if you're not truthful about your income, your financial circumstances, what the property is going to be used for, you could cause damage to the bank. And if you cause damage to the banks, you erode the financial system. And that's sort of a problem for everybody. Just a little explanation here of why it matters. Don't let anybody tell you, well, it's just a loan. I mean, it's just a loan, Sam. Adam Schiff just like, no, it does matter. And the reason these laws are as strict as they are is to protect the entire financial system. So, right? That's the background. My understanding, it's, again, looking at it as an attorney, putting on my legal hat, I look at this and I say, if there's a document where you say this property is my primary residence and you signed it, and one of two things is true. Either it is your primary residence, but like Letitia James and Adam Schiff, they are required by law to live in the state and the district where they are elected. Letitia James can live anywhere in New York State, right? She is the New York State Attorney General. Adam Schiff, when he signed this mortgage with his wife, has to be what? In his district in California. I think that's what California requires. Yeah, live in the district. Robbie, fact check me on that. Make sure I'm not leading the audience astray. But regardless, he has to be a resident of California. You can't live in Arizona or Maryland and be a congressional representative, a congressman from the great state of California. Can't do that. Not that I'm aware of, at least. And I've looked at the residency requirements. The laws on residency in California say you can leave for temporary reasons, but not permanent reasons. And declaring that you're a full-time resident of a particular house and declaring so under oath would be a violation there. So what makes it easy to prosecute somebody like this is you just put the piece of paper in it and say, did you sign it? Oh, you didn't? In comes the notary public. They haul her or him in. Madam Notary Public, Mr. Notary Public, did you have, look, bring your binder, bring a binder, a little thumbprints, you know. Then they get an expert. Is that Adam Schiff's thumbprint? Well, yes, it is. Is that his ID? Senator, because he is now a senator. Back then he was Senator, is that your signature? Oh, is that your ID? Is that a photocopy of your ID? Is that, what do? You have nowhere to go. So then he'll say, okay, yes, I signed it. So then what's his defense? Well, so where do you live? He's got to be very careful how he answers that question, right? because he's sort of damned either way. You know, when you play chess and the entire objective of chess is to get your opponent, okay, series of moves, okay, you get your opponent to, no matter where he moves with his king, which is the objective of the game, is to take the king. No matter where he moves the king, he gets donezo, right? He gets taken out. And, well, that's checkmate, right? As an attorney, I can tell you, having questioned people under oath, if you get them to the point where no matter how they answer the question, they have just legally screwed themselves, you've won. And it's very easy to get there. It's a huge problem for these people. So let me, Alex, get into this a little bit far, because in my view right now, more so than they ever were against Trump, the walls are closing in on the Democrats. And you don't know it yet because it's not being as widely reported as all the anti-Trump hysteria was when he was in office and following his ouster in 2020, 2021. I'm going to start calling it that, by the way, his ouster. The more that comes out about that stinky election in 2020, the more it's going to look like it's going to come out to be a coup. That is where I'm at right now. So, well, we'll see if I'm right about that or not. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Back in a moment, folks. Don't go anywhere. More radio excellence after the break.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Friends, welcome to the place to be. Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840, KXNT. Sam at whatsrightshow.com. That's my email. Sam at whatsrightshow.com. And of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. Okie dokie. So, the Democrats getting themselves into a wee bit of trouble. And yes, this is a piece right now. Let's see, the New York Post has reported that grand juries are weighing criminal charges for Letitia James, a.k.a. Tish James, and Adam Schiff. Several sources are reporting that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, appointed Ed Martin as a special attorney to lead the prosecution of James and Schiff for potential mortgage fraud, bank fraud, and wire fraud. By the way, Ed Martin is a beast. When I talk about the real deal, the federal prosecutor, the guy that could put Capone away, that kind of lawyer. Not Pam Bondi, high cameras, but, just, she's okay. But a real lawyer, not Matt Gaetz either. I know a lot of you were, Matt Gaetz. Well, let's bring back Matt Gaetz. Not the right guy for this either. So, Ed Martin's a prosecutor that can go in, can build a case, and be persuasive in front of a jury. Here's a fun fact. A lot of people don't realize this. A little inside baseball here. Just talking to you now as a lawyer. Not every lawyer is good at talking to a jury. Not every lawyer is capable, actually honest to goodness capable, of going up in front of people, talking to them and persuading them. And this is something a lot of lawyers don't realize until it's too late, meaning they don't realize it until they're in front of a jury and they're like, To present a criminal case as a federal prosecutor, you have to be good on your feet. You've got to be organized. You've got to be methodical. You've got to have confidence. By the way, I think it's even more difficult to be a criminal defense attorney, honestly. But that's for another time. Regardless, Martin's the guy. So if I were Adam Schiff, if I were someone who cares about Adam Schiff, If I was Tish James or someone in her orbit, I would be, what's the term? Crapping bricks. Yes, giant cinder block bricks, as a matter of fact. I would be freaking the F out. So this, this is, and by the way, this is what people are saying. You don't have to take my word for it. A lot of experienced prosecutors who have done this for a living are reporting on this. Anonymous author Miles Taylor talked about this. And then, of course, I mean, I'll tell you, it's just, but Pulte got into it too. Here's legal analyst, I'll start with this. Legal analyst Danny Savalas talking about Letitia James. What he's saying here, Savalas is absolutely right.
There is nothing scarier for a citizen to get a subpoena or find out that they're being investigated by a federal criminal grand jury. It's terrifying, and here's why. Grand jury investigations sweep broadly. They gather terabytes of information, and they're very efficient at going through it. And the problem there for people is that they may be investigating issue number one and then stumble across never before known issue number two when going through all those documents. That is why if somebody is the subject, the target of a grand jury investigation, that is not a good sign. So given that the federal government has such tremendous power to investigate, Letitia James should be very concerned. Not that she necessarily did anything wrong, but because that kind of scrutiny of financial records, of business records, everything going back probably years, might yield something that the government finds interesting.
Okay. Not that she did anything wrong. He doesn't want to get into any kind of, I'll be much more blunt with you. If the reporting about the document that she signed is accurate, then she absolutely did commit a few felonies, right? Because again, there's two specific allegations against her, one having to do with residency and the other one having to declare what type of building it was that she was buying. And I'm not, Robbie, I don't immediately remember the details. If it was, she declared on the form that it was a 5-unit or a 4-unit building, when it was in fact a 5-unit, and that you get a more favorable mortgage for a 4-unit property. 4-unit. I think that's what it was. Then it doesn't matter. But the point is, there's two declarations that she made under oath, and they both are certifiably false. She's not a resident of a state other than New York, and the property evidently is not a 5-bedroom unit, regardless. Here we go. Sam Antar, who is a forensic accountant on the show The Count on Newsmax yesterday, Sunday, said this about the charges that James is facing.
I don't have a vendetta against her, and even if I did, it doesn't make a difference. She falsified mortgage documents. Case closed. Second of all, the mistake being the clerical error doesn't happen 10 times over 22 years for a Brooklyn property and several times over the last 4 or 5 years for a Virginia properties. These are not clerical errors. These are a pattern of fraud. Every single serious person that's looked at the evidence says it's damning to her. It's an open and shut case. The only thing that may happen at this point, which I predict, is that more people, collusion, more people like mortgage brokers, title companies, closing lawyers, there might be more people brought into this net.
And by the way, this guy goes, we should go after all corrupt politicians. Doesn't matter what their party is. You can't lie on your mortgage documents. And he's right.
In the coming months, I am going to develop a case against the machine that produces the Letitia Jameses of society and the Zohran Mamdanis of society and other corrupt politicians irrespective of party. I'm going to go after all the nonprofits. It's called grassroots washing.
Yeah, that's it. Now, understand this, right? These are very straightforward cases. This is not like the Trump. This is not like the money that was paid from Trump's pocket, to, through Cohen to buy off that one, Hobag that had a thing with Trump and it's a campaign finance payment that had no basis in law. It's not like the charges in New York, the state charges in New York that Letitia James pushed against Trump and the Trump org for their accounting. None of this. Those were nonsense charges that required legal gymnastics. These are fundamentally straightforward charges, and it's going to be a problem. And by the way, where else this is happening? Look at the gerrymandering fight. Look at the redistricting fight in Texas. These guys are breaking the law nakedly, breaking the law. They're going to be punished for it, all for the sake of resisting Trump. How foolish. Be right back. Don't go anywhere, folks. If you follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, you saw I made a little joke yesterday. A little joke about redistricting. I said, it's redistricting when Democrats do it. It's gerrymandering when Republicans do the same thing. Mirejovsky, welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, your place to be for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So here's the scoop. You hear the news. By the way, CBS News just was listening to this, did a thing about how the lawmakers are still out of the state. They're still out of the state, and they still haven't shown up. And again, they play the audio, they play the video, they show how, they're gaveling the session into order and they don't have a quorum. And I think that the way that the media, the liberal media at least, mainstream media, is presenting this is to show that it's working. The resistance is working. Yes, look at that. The Republicans, another day of the Republicans just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. That's the wrong take. Like, that is objectively not what's going on. What's going on behind the scenes is that Abbott is setting these guys up for prison. Greg Abbott is no fool. He may roll around in a wheelchair. He is anything but slow. Abbott has decided he's going to open a session, a special session, over and over and over again. And one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to show up and get arrested in the state of Texas, or alternatively, they're just going to have to abandon their seats. And then those seats get filled, presumably by people more favorable to the Republicans' redistricting cause. So here is Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, over the weekend, describing exactly his plan. He's not hiding any of this.
So first, this could literally last years because in Texas, I'm authorized to call a special session every 30 days. It lasts 30 days. And as soon as this one is over, I'm going to call another one, then another one, then another one, then another one. If they show back up in the state of Texas, they will be arrested and taken to the Capitol. If they want to evade that arrest, they're going to have to stay outside of the state of Texas for literally years. And they might as well just start voting in California or voting in Illinois, wherever they may be. And that will aid and support the lawsuit that I filed in the Texas Supreme Court saying that these lawmakers have abandoned their seat because we are incapable of conducting business for the people of Texas because they have fled. This is the most un-Texan thing we've ever seen. In Texas, from the time of the Alamo until today, Texas stand and fight. What these cowards did, they didn't stand and fight. They fled and went to leftist blue states that may be more aligned with their personal philosophy that is not welcome in the state of Texas.
Yeah, there it goes. Basically, you want to act like a crazy liberal leftist. You want to run away from a fight. You want to go ahead and do it. But here's what we're going to do. We will go and again and again and again reopen new sessions, forcing you to either show up and pay the consequences, pay the piper, or alternatively, remain outside of the state and abandon your seat. Now, what is, I'll tell you, why is this such a fight? Well, Basically, the long and the short of it is this. Democrat states, and we've talked about this a bit last week, Democratic states have already gerrymandered themselves to a place where they can't really squeeze out any more Democrat districts. Perhaps a few in New York, perhaps a few in California, but both states, the process to get there, to get to redistricting, is more challenging. They can't just go to the state legislature. They have to, for example, in California, they've got to go and change the Constitution. They have to take it to the voters because now there's an independent commission that does it. So how many seats are in play if Republicans are doing now what they finally ought to have done for years, and that is play hardball the same way Democrats have played? Texas, a possible 5 seats. California, could get balanced out. Democrats get it 5 seats. Missouri, Republicans 2. Ohio, that's maybe 3 Republican seats. Wisconsin, there we could lose a couple seats, 2 seats. Indiana, possible 1 Republican seat. Maryland and Washington, a couple of seats to Democrats. Florida, that's a huge one. If DeSantis goes through it, that there could be 8 to 10 new seats. And remember, the big X factor, too, is behind the scenes, Trump is has ordered a new census. There's nothing in the law that prohibits it. And this new census will be ordered not to count illegals. The demographic map for California, for every blue state that was playing this game, has gone, blown up. I don't even... You know what? Actually, one of the things in California, they may end up losing seats, period. So, you know what? Democrats, maybe we'd lose a few Republicans. They could lose Democrat-held seats as well. It's an absolute disaster for the Democratic Party. This is why they're fighting it tooth and nail. But once again, they're getting too clever by half. They do not realize that this one silly fight is making them, 1, look like idiots and clowns. 2, the conversation now is so many Americans are waking up and realizing that Democrats have been the biggest gerrymanderers out there. It's actually a spotlight on the level of political chicanery that the Democrats have been pushing. And watching them contort themselves, the Democrats contort themselves into pretzels, explaining this is one of the great joys of following the story. You see Eric Holder, the former head of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General under Barack H. Obama, the self-described wingman to the president. So he gets up there, and this is where my joke about gerrymandering came into. Is it redistricting? Well, it's redistricting if you want to save democracy. It's only gerrymandering if you're an evil Republican and you want to seize power.
Let me ask you, how can gerrymandering both be a threat to democracy and also the way to save it?
Well, there's no question that gerrymandering is a threat to our democracy. It allows politicians to pick their voters as opposed to citizens choosing their representatives. But we are now in a situation where we find ourselves where authoritarian moves are being made by the White House through various states, Texas most prominent among them. And there has to be a response to that. What I've said is that we have to protect our democracy now if we ultimately want to be able to save it. And so taking the reasonable steps that have been proposed in California, I think it makes a great deal of sense in this moment. A temporary way in which to respond to that which is happening in Texas, with the thought that after this crisis is passed, we get back to the fight against gerrymandering by anybody.
Oh, so Texas gerrymandering bad. California gerrymandering, to the extent that it's balancing out what the Republicans are doing in Texas, is good. And then once we sort of suspend our criticism of gerrymandering, we, the Democrats, can go back to establishing rules against it. Meaning, it is nakedly partisan. Every argument that the Democrats are making against this, it's just posturing. And please observe the fluidity with which these people lie. not to get off topic here, but you know, all this stuff now coming about Obama and everybody inside on, you know, that was conspiring against Trump and the whole Russia collusion hoax story. You go back and you look at the videos and you realize that you know, Obama and Clinton, they all knew the truth and are sitting there on camera lying through their teeth, and they make it look so easy. I couldn't lie like this. Literally, this would be, it would be impossible for me. You almost have to admire the levels of sociopathy these people are capable of. J.B. Pritzker just flat out dodged the question, which is about all he can dodge given his physical condition.
Every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction. The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights is what Texas is attempting to do. That's what's wrong with their efforts right now. And the fact that the President of the United States knows it and nevertheless is asking them to do it. That is what's wrong with what we're seeing right now. Democracy is at stake.
Democracy is at stake. That's one of those buzz phrases that you have to be aware of. When Democrats say buzz, you know, you almost hear the alarm go. When they say democracy is at stake, it means they're going to lose. So democracy equals Democratic Party being in charge. If people democratically choose Republicans, well, that's fascism. That's because of misinformation. That is because of election interference. That is because of Russia collusion. Could go on and on. There's all sorts of reasons for why Republicans lose, but none of them have to do ever with democracy working. The people can't possibly vote for Donald Trump. That's one of the greatest advantages now, I would say, upsides of this gerrymandering fight, because again, it has provoked such a violent Democrat response that's making them look foolish. Here's New York Governor Kathy Hochul Sunday on Fox News with Shannon Bream, not one to be outdone with, well, or out-shouted by her fellow Democrat governors.
Here's how National Review summarized it. They said it was only 3 years ago that New York's Democratic legislature drew up a map so brazenly contemptuous of basic rules that govern a district's contiguousness that the state's Democrat-dominated Court of Appeals threw it out. The New York Times at the time called those maps comically contorted. That's their quote. So your state's highest court at the time, all the judges appointed by Democratic governors, they threw the maps out. So fair to say Democrats have done what they're now accusing Republicans of doing.
No, we followed the rules. We do it every 10 years. We base it on census.
But the court said you didn't follow the rules.
Well, we did follow the rules.
So the court was wrong?
Well, we followed the rules.
So the court was wrong? Oh, no, we followed the rules. Okay. These are, like, I don't know, like, this is like a husband or wife, I guess. It could be a wife, too, getting caught in bed with, you know, in flagrante, right, with another person. You know, the other spouse comes home. Or are you in bed with someone? What the hell? And they would go, I'm not in bed with someone. This is not what you think. These people would lie like it's like they're speaking the gospel with evidence directly refuting what they're saying just right next to them. And they have no problem doing it. If you ever wondered, you know, what skill set you needed to be a successful Democrat politician, well, here you go. There it is. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment. Don't go anywhere. More of the What's Right show back here on this program, on this station, right after this. I guess maybe, Robbie, the good news is some of the dumb ones say actually out loud what they think. are a little too truthful. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, here behind the What's Right microphone. So Beto O'Rourke, who I can't take credit for this. Somebody described him as the gay Pete Buttigieg, and I can't stop laughing. Beto O'Rourke, one-time congressman, failed senatorial candidate in the great state of Texas, perennial kind of liberal. He's a progressive lib in Texas. There you go. And he's trying, and he's, what is he? Is he Kennedy of some distant relation? Anyway, Beto O'Rourke held a rally on Sunday. And then he had these comments for MSNBC that the Democrats need to be focused on power exclusively. Somebody needs to tell this guy, this is exactly what they have been focused on. It's all they focus on. Power, power, power. It was never about democracy.
Absolutely. And I just think it's super clear that Republicans care about power and nothing else. And for far too long, Democrats have cared about being right, coloring within the lines, following rules, and power has always been a secondary consideration. We need to absolutely flip that around and focus on power exclusively. It's why I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing by Governor Newsom in California, Governor Pritzker in Illinois, even Governor Hochul in New York. They're talking about seizing the initiative and redrawing their congressional boundaries to maximize Democratic Party advantage. We got to fight fire with fire. I mean, we wish the refs were going to call the fouls, that there were going to be penalties for what they are doing right now, but the refs have left the arena.
Yeah, or corrupted.
And to fight this out and to win. We got to be focused on it.
Do these people not hear themselves? They're all the host here and the other guest, all This is of course this is just classic MSNBC show. So anyway, do they not hear themselves sound ridiculous that mere days after revelations that Obama, Clinton, and the people at the top levels of the U.S. government conspired against a Republican candidate and then a president-elect, later a president, for political purposes, to destroy him, to end him politically for the purposes of their political power. And I bet you if you caught these people sort of, on a hot mic, Project Veritas type of, hidden camera situation, you came up to them at a party, and you first would have to, you'd maybe have to get them inebriated a little bit. So have to give Beto O'Rourke some ginger ale, and you'd start talking to him, and you'd talk to him about, wow, these revelations that are coming out. I mean, it looks like Obama really kind of ran a number on Trump. Each and every one of these people would admit to you in, I don't know what words, but the effect of it would be that the ends justified the means. They would say to us, it's good that they did that. It needed to be done. It needed to be done. And that is like, that's just wild to me. Because I think they still now consider themselves on some crazy level to be the protectors of our great democracy of the United States of America, cloak themselves in all of these values that, of course, are deeply personal to me and to you, things that actually do matter, us being a great democracy, 250 years of freedom, being the United States of America, being a place of opportunity, being the country that came from nothing as an upstart little nation state to a world superpower, building from scratch some of the greatest cities in the world when the rest of the planet had we'll call it a running head start. to now be here in the last 20 or 30 years watching the left destroy everything it touches, and then for them to have the gall saying they are the standard bearers of all that is great and American, while, of course, trashing the flag, our nation's history, our founding fathers, and everything that in reality made us who we are. This stuff galls me. And I think the saving grace here is that there's still enough American DNA. And look at me as an example. You know, my parents came here in 1977. I was born shortly thereafter. Not immediately, okay? No anchor baby situation. 1980, 3 years. My parents came here legally. You know, but even though both of my parents were born in the same city, in the same country, in the heart of Europe, now the Czech Republic, the American DNA is in me because there's something enormously contagious about the American dream, whether you were born here, whether you came here, whether your parents came here. There's something intoxicating about this. And even the Democrats, with all their slickness, they can't destroy this. They can't poison the well enough to counteract this. I think we're going to have a hell of a week here on the radio. I hope you've come ready to have some fun and learn a thing or two. All right, Mark Levin up next, the great one. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Yeah, buckle up, folks. I think a lot is going to be happening in short order. Sam at what'srightshow.com, at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. See you later, folks. Bye.